The way the transfer portal wrapped up for the Auburn Tigers and this coaching staff puts a ton of faith and pressure on Jared Smith.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. I want to talk about a handful of these true sophomores that we've talked about a ton here on the show about how they're going to be the core. They're going to be the core of this 2026 team. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. I want to talk about Jonathan Echols, the tight end, in a moment. But clearly this staff has tremendous faith in Jared Smith. And I think most Auburn fans have tremendous faith in Jared Smith. I mean, there's a few assumed truths here. One is it's virtually impossible to make an impact as a pass rusher, as a true freshman consistently in the SEC. You just don't see it. And there's not even really that many exceptions to the rules. You just don't see it. And Jared Smith, despite not being a full-time player and just kind of a piece in the rotation a year ago, I mean, you felt him. You felt his presence in the pass rush when he was on the field. You saw glimpses of it. It's like, wow, okay. Yeah, that seems a little bit ahead of schedule, which is exciting. So I think there's an assumed truth there as far as, okay, what he was asked to do as a true freshman, he may already be a little bit ahead of the game with what we saw a year ago. The other is, typically, your biggest jump in development happens between your freshman year and your sophomore year. And I think the staff is banking on that a ton with Jared Smith and several other positions, including others on the defensive front. I think some of this is you look in the portal and it's just like, it's tough to get edge guys. It's easier to retain your edge guys. We've talked about this with offensive tackle. Programs don't let elite edge guys leave. That's why a lot of these edge guys that you see that take the step at the next level, they come from non-P4 schools, right? We saw that with J Mack a few years ago from App State. We saw it with Kieran Crawford, who's now, obviously from Arkansas State, who's now in Mobile this week working out for NFL scouts. Like that's the track record here. And so I think keeping Jared Smith makes a ton of sense. And also they may have had limited options to add guys in front of them. I think the Deshaun Womack ad from Ole Miss makes sense. The Nate Johnson ad from Mizzou, we'll see how that pans out. But just looking at the type of impact that Jared Smith had last year, he didn't play a ton. Now, he did play more than I realized, but he didn't play a ton. So he played in 9 games last season, had 110 snaps. And so for folks who are like, okay, how much is that? Here's for comparison here. Kieran Crawford led Auburn's edges last year in total snaps with 616. Keldrick was second with 556. Chris Murray had 277. And then Amaris Williams had 210. And then Jared Smith was there with 110. There is somewhat of a precedent for this recently in Auburn history. And I think it's important that we use recent Auburn history here because when it comes to the defensive front, it's the same situation. Same defensive coordinator, same defensive line coach. We'll see how the edge game changes with position coaches. But I think the scheme and the general idea and implementation will be the same because this is still DJ Durkin's defense. And I think that step, we can look at Amaris Williams. In 2024, Amaris's true freshman year, he played in 10 games for 119 snaps. Amaris played 11 games this year for 210. So similar snap count as a true freshman, and then his production or total plays, they about doubled. The difference, though, Amaris was still the third or the fourth guy, I mean, just based off the snap count and impact, Jared Smith isn't going to be given that opportunity. Jared Smith is going to be given a different opportunity, an opportunity to be the guy. There is no Keldrick. There is no Keyron. Can Jared Smith be the guy? I think there's a lot of faith being put on Jared Smith by this coaching staff. I mean, almost unfairly so, I would say, but I think he's worthy of it. If you told me Jared Smith had 8 sacks this season, like, I don't think I would be shocked. But pass rushing it's a unit. Yes, there's typically one guy who gets more sacks than the others, but sacks are a total defensive stat in my mind. Yes, they get attributed to an individual, but it's typically not just one guy making the sack. You have to pass rush together. And so my question with Jared Smith is, like, I trust Jared Smith to take that step. I don't think that's crazy by any step of the imagination. Now, asking him to play 500 or 600 snaps, that is a tremendous jump. But just by the numbers of what we're looking at, that's probably what's going to have to happen unless you just sub guys out a ton and then everybody's playing like 300 snaps each between Jared Smith, between Deshaun Womack from LSU, between Nate Johnson of Missouri. And then Joe Phillips has a piece in this too. I looked this up. How many snaps did J.J. Falk played 2 games for 13 snaps? And then did Joe Phillips play? I don't think he did. He did not. Okay, so, and those are 2 guys that reportedly the staff really, really likes. And so we get to see exactly how that transpires next year. But all those guys are going to have to play a ton. They're going to have to. You can't just play 2 or 3 edge guys. You got to play the full room. So J.J. Falk, Joe Phillips, Jared Smith, Nate Johnson, and Deshaun Womack. I'm fascinated to see how DeMarcus Riddick fits into this. And are they just going to blitz Xavier Atkins more? Xavier Atkins' win rate was very appealing. That was a big part of his success last year. Do they do that a little bit more to help supplement this defensive line? I think you're going to have to. So excited to see how they use Jared Smith. Clearly a lot of faith put on Jared Smith. We'll see if he can take that next step. And how big of a next step is it? Because I think we're all expecting him to take a big step. I don't think it's reasonable to ask, though, the step that the current state of the roster implies that he needs to take, because it's pretty massive. It's a pretty massive step. But he's very tall, very long. Maybe he can take a large step there. That's a bad joke that I did not execute well. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I want to talk about another sophomore in this discussion. Jonathan Echols, kind of a similar situation, and the snap counts with what USF did last year at tight end makes me think it's Jake Johnson and Jonathan Echols. You guys push back on me if you think differently. That's next right here on Locked on Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Look, we got one more football game that you can wager on this sports calendar. It's almost done. It's almost done. The Seattle Seahawks, a 4.5-point favorite in Super Bowl 60 over the New England Patriots, a Super Bowl 49 rematch. I got a feeling most people are going to pick Seattle. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But hey, if you're a new customer, just bet $5. You can get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today's show also brought to you by our friends at Mazda. We love Mazda. Mazda's the best. Mazda's the absolute best. This is Mazda's moving the game forward for those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. I mean, it's hard to not talk about, guys elevating their game and not think about what Keyshawn Hall did in Auburn's upset win over the Florida Gators this weekend. It's moments like that that reminds us what it really takes to raise the bar. All the extra work off the court. He's been exceptional everywhere he's been, and thankfully now he's an Auburn Tiger. We put that same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel, but what it takes to get there is what makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Thank you so much for making Locked on Auburn your first listen every single day. Jonathan Echols, another true sophomore on this 2026 roster that I think is super, super interesting, and a tight end room that actually filled out pretty well. Jake Johnson and Hunter Herring, your seniors. Jake Johnson from North Carolina, Hunter Herring, a converted quarterback from ULM. And then you've got Arliss Boardingham, who had a really good freshman year at Florida, did not play much at Bowling Green due to injury. And then you've got Jonathan Echols as one of the three true sophomores in the tight end room, with Xavier Newsome and Ryan G in there as well. And I think Jonathan Echols is interesting because it does appear, when you look at what USF did offensively from a snap count point of view at tight end last year, you had Echols, who played in 10 games for 307 snaps, and you had Wyatt Sullivan, who played in 13 games at tight end for 415 snaps. So this is a 1A and then a 1-2. I don't even want to say 1A and 1B. Like, it's a pretty sizable difference. 100 snaps, 3 extra games. Some of that had to do with the bowl game, I'm sure. But Echols playing 100 snaps less in 3 games, like, well, maybe that is a 1A, 1B situation. So then you look at Auburn's tight end situation. Like, I think Jake Johnson is the favorite to be 1A. Who is 1B? Is it Hunter Herring, who you got to like his athleticism, but hasn't been playing the position too long? And we've talked about the tight end position a ton on this show, even with having Ryan G on the show often. It's not a position you can just snap your fingers and know how to do everything. You might know how to do some of the things. You may know how to just run the routes, or you may know just how to block. But there's a lot that goes into playing the tight end position, because you have to do everything an offensive lineman can do and a lot of things that wide receivers can do. And especially in this offense where they do not want to sub, you have to be able to do it all. You have to do it all well and quickly and efficiently. And I just think I love the upside of Hunter Herring. I also like the upside of Boardingham. But I think the safest 2 options here are Jake Johnson and Jonathan Echols. And so if there's a 1A, 1B right now, I do think it's those 2 guys. Jake Johnson, I mean, he's played a lot of football. This is it for him. This is his last year of eligibility. And I think with what you see with him, what you see is what you get. And I think in this first year of this transition and the type of role that the tight end plays in an Alex Golesh system, I think that's okay. They use the tight end a lot, but that doesn't mean they throw it to him a lot. And I don't know if Jake Johnson's the guy you want to throw it to a ton. But I think you're okay with Jake Johnson being a guy on the field. Jonathan Echols knows this offense, played a bunch at USF as a true freshman, like half of Auburn's roster now. Guys who played early, mostly a lot of these guys as true freshmen at USF, following their coaches over to the SEC. So wanted to point that out, that I think Jake Johnson leads the way. 1A, if they do a 1A, 1B type situation, I think it's Jake Johnson, and I think it would be Jonathan Echols. But we'll see how they use Hunter Herring, and they'll see Arliss Boardingham. Brad Law called him General Arliss Boardingham, which I think is awesome. So a lot of guys to keep an eye out on. The sophomore class is going to be a ton of fun for this team this season. So wanted to spend a few minutes talking about the type of step Jared Smith needs to take. And of course, how the tight end room could shake out, and how I think Jonathan Echols needs to be a major, major part of it. Please like the video, please subscribe, and we will see you guys next time. Oh, and if you made it this far, go to lockedonauburn.supercast.com, join the Everydayer Club for just $5 a month. I think there's also a discount if you do a full year. You can get access to this show ad-free. You get access to an ad-free feed. It doesn't matter if you listen on Apple or Spotify. They've got all the different audio apps on there, compatible with all of it. And you also get access to a members Discord. A lot of people tagged me during the AFC Championship game over the weekend. That was a lot of fun. I was too nervous to answer, but if you have questions about portal guys or anything like that, you can tag me in that Discord as well. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked on Auburn.